or web. Okay, here it goes. We're good. I had to turn it off, turn it back on. Technology. All right. First up is agenda approval. Do we have any changes? Anything that needs to be changed or dropped off or anything? Council? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Let's see, where's my button? Sorry about that. Ayes have it, so moved. All right. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of November 8th, 2019, special city council meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none? Votes unanimous, so moved. And we'll move right into the public comments on agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matters not on the agenda. Each person, just when you come up, just state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes timed. I do have one yellow card. Brian DeResta. I hope I said that right, Brian. Come on up, sir.
Brian DeResta, I live in 411 Ridgewood Circle over by where Nighttown used to be. I noticed I was one of the people caught up in the whole Airbnb thing with the low density residential. I also noticed that reading the city laws that low density residential is prohibited in 3 areas, one of them being Holiday Isle. But when you go on the city's website, all of a sudden it says, no, you can do short-term there, short-term rentals there, but not in the other low-density residential. Reasoning I've been told is because it increases traffic, but my point is, to use an analogy, if it's okay for one person to drive 60 miles an hour, why isn't it okay for the other person to drive 60 miles an hour? If it's okay to do short-term rentals there, but our concern is the increased traffic, why can't I run one at my house where I still live in the house, the people park in my driveway, and if you would have driven by my house this past week, there are more people driving through my neighborhood than I have in a whole year stay at my house. There are people that have parties constantly. When I did run this, I made sure the people stayed in my guest rooms. It was usually a father and a daughter or single parent and a child. They always parked in my driveway. They didn't park on the streets. But even last night, there was probably about 50 cars on the road. And that is consistent almost every single night of the week. But that's not low-density residential. There is more traffic going through my neighborhood with everything. I'm appealing to the city that if you're going to allow it in Holiday Isle, then you should allow it elsewhere, as long as people are registering with short-term residential and they're not parking on the street, clogging up the byways or the roads and all that, if people are living in the house and actually running it. Now, there are people, I understand, I sat in the short-term thing that was discussed a couple months ago about the bachelorette parties with people running nude. I mean, there's limits to everything. But there's people like myself who are literally having people stay in a guest room, and I'm home 90% of the time, except when I'm deployed to like Afghanistan or something like that, and my girlfriend is home to make sure the people are behaving like they are in a residential community. Most people that stay with me are there because they like to walk to Harbor Walk. They want to stay in a house with somebody that they consider a friend, and be able to walk to Harbor Walk and walk back and be in peace and quiet and have that home feel versus staying in a hotel. So that's all I'm asking is the city to look at what they're doing and allow people to continue doing that as long as they're not causing a huge mess and having these massive parties, which I understand was a concern with the weddings and stuff like that was going on. And I am the polar opposite of that. I am the people that want peace and quiet, but want to enjoy the beaches of Destin also.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody on the council have any questions?
Sir, I apologize. Where did you say your address was?
411 Ridgewood Circle. It's right around the corner from where Nighttown used to be, or whatever the church is that's there these days. But it's a small little neighborhood, no homeowners association. most of the people that I know, I actually used to employ to like come in if I was deployed up at Fort Bragg or wherever, they would come in and clean my house and actually greet the people, and like everybody was friends with the people that stayed in my house because they were repeat people that had come down and were like, hey, we like staying with a guy who's in the military, and we've become friends with them. Their kids, stuff like that. So, but right in that area, and I noticed traffic, it's ridiculous lately, but I mean, like I said, if you actually put a meter on my driveway compared to everybody else's, it would take me all summer of running an Airbnb to even get close to what somebody has in 2 weekends in my neighborhood.
That's understood. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir. Anybody else out there that wants to have a shot at the public testimony, come up to the podium? I just want to remind everyone, there will be another opportunity at the end of tonight's meeting to weigh in on any discussion that you heard here tonight, and you'll have an opportunity to come up to the podium. Seeing no one else, I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the meeting. We don't have any proclamation, recognitions, or special announcements, so we'll go straight into the city manager's report. Lance?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Each year, we're required to bring forward a year-end budget amendment, and we have Mr. Farmer here to present to you or answer any questions with regards to the 2019 year-end budget amendment.
This is just a housekeeping item that's required by the state as we close the fiscal year out, that we match our expenditures to our actual budget. Actually, this year was a lot closer to budget than in past years, with I believe only 8 general fund budgets actually exceeding their budget for the year, which is a good tall task. I can answer any questions you might have about anything in particular, or if you would like any explanation or anything.
Can we start this with a motion and then have discussion if there's any questions?
You can start with the motion and then.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion. I move the resolution 19-26 be approved.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second, and we'll open it to discussion. Mr. Menschel, you're first up.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying to find it, unfortunately. Can you tell me, there was an entry in here for additional money for PAWS. What was that for? Because we just approved the contract.
Paul's charges us a standard fixed amount for their regular services during the week, and on the weekends there is I believe it's $70 or $75 fee for every call out and things of that sort, and so that could exceed what our normal budget is.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Farmer?
I guess the only question I have, because of that, moving forward, we need to consider that in contracts, okay? To be able to spend that much money on a weekend, we need, PAWS is just like a code compliance. It's a 7-day a week, 24-hour-a-day job. So to spend that much money on overtime, we need to revisit that.
It's $75 per trip that they come into the city.
On the weekend?
Yes, and we do budget some additional dollars for that, but they just exceeded what we had budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
Any other items? I was going to try to stall for Mr. Destin. He had to take an emergency break for a second. If it suits everyone, can I go ahead and vote? We have a quorum.
We're going to need Mr. Destin here to vote.
Okay.
since he's-
Oh, we'll just wait. Yeah, we don't have any music, sorry.
Parker.
He's coming.
Hear you.
See, if it was a hockey game, we could play rock and roll music until the puck drops. That was very expedient, though.
I did my best.
Thank you, sir. All right, so we've had a motion, had a second. If there's no further discussion, let's go ahead and take this to a vote. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Continue on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4B is for informational purposes only, and the title is Contract Management. I wanted to thank Councilman Mitchell and Councilwoman Ramswell, and I think probably some others, but they're the ones that brought it to my attention that we needed to look into some invoicing deficiencies. Within the last 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity, along with some of the other executive staff, to go back through and finally had a chance to dive in myself personally. We did indeed identify some gaps, some areas that we could improve, and some shortfalls. We have some policies that date back to 1999 and 2001 era that we could certainly update, and that we could certainly close some of the loops that we would like to close on these processes to make the process more efficient and effective. Some other methodology that we need to reincorporate is a method of verifying that the work that we're paying for is indeed getting done, and that verification is attached directly to invoicing and is made part of this process, so that each member of the approval team is getting to see exactly what was done, and that a staff member has verified that this work was completed. Those are just a few things that we've identified that we can do moving forward to improve this situation. We'll be looking to do many more things as we come up on other areas that we identify that need improvement. And we'll bring most of those, all of those forward to you guys, so you know exactly where we're heading with it.
And this falls right in with what you've already been doing with just your standard operating procedures and protocols in a lot of different areas, not just contract writing and/or verification, correct?
Yes, sir. For the last year and a half, one of the focus points that I knew that we were going to have to focus on when y'all put me in charge last August was that we needed to update our internal procedures. A lot of them are outdated, and we're slowly but surely getting to those, and we will continue to do so until we're completely up to date.
Any comments? Anyone want to weigh in? Ask him any questions on this new project? At least it wasn't another one of our action agenda items that we slap on top of you guys while you're trying to do your job. We've had a lot of those, but we're making progress, and I appreciate it, Lance. Continue on then.
Item 4C is with regards to the Comprehensive Plan Evaluation and Appraisal Report, otherwise known as the EAR update. And Mr. Zunguzzi is here to give us a brief update on that procedure.
Thank you, City Manager. A couple of months ago, or maybe a month ago, I think, I gave an update that we were in the process of doing an appraisal of our comprehensive plan consistent with state requirements. And I recall at that time that the mayor asked that when we had a sense of dates, a timeline of how the process is going to unfold, that I share that with you so that you get prepared for the various meetings that we'll need to have. Just by way of background, we, according to state requirements, have a need to evaluate and appraise our comprehensive plan with respect to 3 areas. Next. Okay, so we're supposed to do a review of our one element that we've committed to the state, which is the coastal management, consistent with new state requirements, which state always reviews developments in coastal areas after each hurricane season. And so there are some updates that they've provided to us, which they've required that each local jurisdiction, state, and city adopt. And so we are reviewing our current element to see whether any of those are consistent with state, and to the extent that they're not, we'll indicate that. And we also, when we're done with that review, actually update our current coastal element in the comprehensive plan, and then send those adopted elements to the state.
When you go through that process and you identify those, will you do you bring those back before us for us to adopt them?
Correct, that's
The
the next,
changes.
that's the next slide. Okay, no problem. So here's a timeline. You can just go through all of them. Yeah, so here's the timeline. So if you recall back in February, we actually wrote to the state about what it is that we're going to commit to do as far as that element is concerned. And September to now, my office, along with Public Services, the City Manager's Office, and the Parks Department, we've been going through a review process identifying deficient areas and areas that need to be updated. So we're going to be completing that process end of this month. December 12th, we're going to go to the LPA and make that presentation of all those recommendations to the LPA. Hopefully January 6th, after the LPA has done its work, we'll bring those recommendations to you for first reading in a public hearing. And the state requires that once you have adopted, quasi-adopted, so to speak, those recommendations, we send them to the state for their comment, and they have 60 days to get back to us and say, we got further questions or they're satisfied with those changes. And then we'll have a final second reading to finally adopt our changes. So that's the timeline that we have right now for you to be able to meet our commitment to get back to the state by February 19th of 2020. You don't need to take any action right now. If there are any comments, I will be more than happy to answer your questions.
Council, any questions for? Nope, none?
Louis,
Go ahead.
just an extension of thanks. I know that you guys are very busy, but keeping us on this timeline is, and on track is very important. Appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Just a few announcements. On November the 28th and 29th, all city facilities will be closed in observance of the Thanksgiving holiday. December the 5th, the 33rd annual Christmas tree lighting will be held at the Destin Community Center. The public is encouraged to attend. The 35th annual Christmas parade will be held on December the 14th. This year's theme is Santa's Workshop. Applications are still being accepted for participants. They are due by December the 6th at the Community Center. The boat parade is going to be held on December the 15th at 6 p.m. in the Destin Harbor. And an update on shifting our engineering division to this building is planned. It is planned to physically take place the week of December the 2nd. So we're on schedule with that. Actually, I had a good meeting today with the staff members involved, and I think we're headed in the right direction. So looking forward to it. And that's all I have, sir.
I have a question about the Christmas parade. Has Ray prepared all the boxes of candy and goodies for us to throw out so we don't run out before we get to Benning Drive?
We need more than last year. We'll supplement, just a little bit more. Take what y'all bought last year and double it.
Make sure it's not Tootsie Rolls. Those things are gross.
No dum-dums.
Do we have a
Nobody
motion,
likes
no Tootsie Rolls?
Dum-dums and Tootsie Rolls are good, man.
All right. And so all the council members, if you don't have a prior issue with that, if you'd like to join me in your golf cart and lots of stuff to hand out, we'll have a good time from the people. So looking forward to that. But I wanted to make sure that we had enough candy. We ran a little short. All right. I think it's time for Mr. Baumann to take it away, sir.
That's right. First, we have 5A, which is the second reading of ordinance number 1932 LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2, zoning maps to include a change in the zoning designation of the properties described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from institutional INST and medium-density residential village, MDRV, to residential office and institutional village residential, ROIVR. providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
And seeing how it's a public hearing, at this time, I'll open up the opportunity for the public to weigh in on this particular ordinance. It's our second reading. Is there anyone out there that want to address, come up to the podium? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion. I move that the City Council approve Ordinance 19-32-LC on second reading.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion amongst council on this particular issue? Seeing none? Vote is unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bowman.
Next up, we have 5B, the second reading of ordinance number 1933-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2, zoning maps, to include a change in the zoning designation of the parcel described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from residential office and institutional general development, ROIGD, and medium-density residential village, MDRV, to residential office and institutional village residential, ROIVR, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Thank you, sir. And at this point, I'll open up public comment, the public portion of our hearing. Is there anyone here in the audience wants to weigh in or make a comment on this particular ordinance? Seeing none, I will close this portion of the public hearing, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion. I move that the City Council approve proposed ordinance 19-33-LC on second reading.
I have a motion,
Second.
and I have a second. Is there any further discussion on this particular item? Seeing none? The vote is unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bowman.
Council, next we have 5C, the first reading of ordinance number 1931-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending the official zoning map as referenced in the Land Development Code, Section 7.12.01A2 zoning maps, to include a change in the zoning designations of the parcels described and generally depicted in the attached Exhibit A from residential office institutional tourist development, ROITD, to commercial general, CG, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for jurisdiction, providing for zoning map amendment, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. This is also a public hearing and will be conducted as a quasi-judicial hearing. I believe, Mr. Zanguzzi, will you be testifying for staff? If you could please stand and raise your right hand. And I know Trey and Ken, you guys are out there. Are either of you going to be testifying? Ken, if you could raise your right hand. Is there anyone else in the audience that will be testifying on this matter today? Seeing none. Lewis and Ken, if you could just raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth? Okay. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Kopp.
The Community Development Department received an application for a zoning map amendment from Gidry Properties on August 14th, 2019. The property in question is located on south of Emerald Coast Parkway, east of Kelwen Circle, and west of Regatta Bay Boulevard. The applicant has submitted the application to align the property's zoning designation with the future land use map. And as you will recall, within the past couple of months, we did some revisions to the commercial general zoning district that applies to all commercial general property in the city. So if this property is rezoned, it will be subject to that ordinance. But tonight, this is just the rezoning application for Mr. Gidry's property. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant, unless you have questions for staff, but we can also reserve that to the end as well.
Rodney, is your questions to staff, or you just want to wait? I have you on the list here. Do you want to?
No, the only thing I want to say was, I was a little bit confused because I thought we already had this in the works. We were already changing this over to commercial. So I was a little bit surprised to see that we have application doing it because we're already in the process of doing it.
That's correct. It was part of the city's plan to rezone the property as part of the rezoning and future land use map alignment that we've been working on. However, I believe due to time constraints, and I'll let the applicant speak to it, but I believe for time purposes, they wanted to do it themselves to speed it along.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else like to ask questions of staff? And if not, we'll let Trey proceed. You guys, go ahead, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Trey Goodwin, 98 Oak Hill Avenue, Fort Walton Beach, Florida. I represent the applicant before you, Guidry Properties LLC. This is a request, as Ms. Cott pointed out, to rezone that parcel that is the 10 acres, more or less, vacant property on Highway 98 in the city of Destin, essentially south of the Regatta Bay area. Most of you are probably familiar with that parcel. It's very visible, thousands of feet on Highway 98. The request will bring, as Ms. Cott pointed out, the parcel's zoning into conformance with its future land use designation, which is commercial general already. As the council's aware, you and your staff have worked hard on essentially revamping how you handle commercial zoning and commercial zoning development orders and that sort of thing in the future. This request understands that and would be subject to that. You've done a lot of work. We've worked with your staff as well and understand your plan going forward in having additional controls to protect adjacent parcels and providing things like buffers. And so all that would come into play. And this request would also help bring consistency to your commercial zoning along the 98 corridor in that area of Destin. When you look at the current map, this particular parcel sits in sort of an enclave along 98, buttressed by commercial on each side. So it would bring consistency there. We have presented this to your land planning agency back in October. It passed unanimously, as you'll see in your agenda packet. We do have staff's recommendation for approval. Again, we have worked closely with your staff through this process. As you're aware, I've been before this council a number of times about this, and I think that with the hard work on the commercial general zoning issue, that really any of the concerns have been largely addressed and will give this council the power in the future to protect other landowners. I have with me tonight planning expert Ken Metcalf. He's going to be available to answer any questions. We also can put on a formal presentation if the council would like that, or if preferable at the council's pleasure, we can simply respond to questions as asked. We are here tonight. We are asking for your vote to approve this rezoning, and I appreciate you allowing me to appear before you tonight.
Thank you, sir. Does council members have any further questions other than what they've seen in their briefing documents? Go ahead, Ms. Ramswell.
Hi, thanks for coming. Question for you. I am assuming, and I hate to assume, we know what that means, but there must be some sort of development or plan in place for you to want to go ahead and move forward with this before it goes through our channels. Any hints at what that might be, or is it for selling purposes, or?
That's an excellent question, and I'll point out, tongue in cheek, I guess the benefit to the city is that my client paid a fee that he wouldn't have otherwise had to pay. But that aside, the property is actively marketed for sale, and my client believes, based on market research, that it is more valuable with a commercial general zoning than it is with its current zoning. And for that reason, my client elected to go ahead and move forward, understanding that the city, in all likelihood, would have rezoned it anyway at no cost to my client. But rather than wait, the only thing that we had to do was get in the timeline behind the movement of the commercial general changes, which we did. So we're behind those changes, and so we think it's appropriate now, given that that's in place, to go ahead and have it zone CG. It could be marketed, updated on the MLS as such.
I appreciate the honest answer. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions for our folks here? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion.
We do need to open up to public comment first.
Oh, that's right. Anybody want to weigh in? I'm sorry. Kind of thought he was the public, but he's not. All right. Anybody want to weigh in on this particular issue? Carrie?
Hello. Carrie Harbarger, Spring Lane. I just was curious, and I might feel a tad, is it common for county commissioners to stand up here and represent clients to develop? I'm sorry.
And they're the
Mr. Goodwin is
attorney.
also an attorney. So.
Well, I understand that, but he's a county commissioner. Is that normal? Am I wrong to think this? Okay.
It doesn't
I
bother
find
me.
it inappropriate. Thank you.
All right. So noted. Thank you, sir.
I move that the city council approve ordinance 19-31-LC.
I'll second it.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, sir.
I will be abstaining from the vote as I am employed by a company that the applicant is a partner in.
So noted. Ray, can you clean up my board here? Thank you, sir. All right. No further exclusions, delusions, or comments. All right, let's go ahead and vote. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Congratulations, Mr. Goodwin. All right. Back in your court there, sir.
All right. Last public hearing today is item 5D. This is also a quasi-judicial hearing. We have today here Interlight Engineering on behalf of Dunavant Gulf LLC requesting approval of a major subdivision and major deviation to a major development order identified as Henderson Beach Resort 7th Amendment. Proposed development consists of condominium units, townhomes, restaurant space, office space, workforce housing, conference center, office space for the existing hotel expansion, wooded deck added to the existing Henderson lofts, maintenance facility, a boutique area, event lawn, and pool amenity. Proposed project is generally located west of Matthew Boulevard, north of Scenic Highway 98, and south of Emerald Coast Parkway. Total site area is 14.40 acres, more or less. Lewis, again, I presume you'll be testifying on behalf of staff. And Mr. Tatum, I see you're over there. Do we have anyone else that will be testifying on behalf of Interlight? If you guys could, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth? Okay. And with that, I will again turn it over to Ms. Cobb.
We are going to go ahead and let the applicant present their case.
Approach the podium, sir. And just hit the button, state your name, address.
Yes, sir. Good evening, council. My name is David Smith. I'm with Interlight Engineering Corporation, and I'm representing Dunavant Gulf LLC. And just a general overview is Henderson Beach Resort was approved as a Tier 1 development application that was approved on June 3rd, 2014. And since that time, there's been 2 buildings that have been constructed. One is a 171-room hotel, and the other is a 54-unit condominium that we call the Lofts. Also, since that time, we've had 6 amendments to the development order for Henderson Beach. So what's before you this evening is the 7th amendment that we're proposing. So I want to do just a general overview of the 6th amendment that we currently have approved. And I'll try to do this where everyone can see, but this is the approved 6th amendment site plan. And for reference, this is Matthew, this is Scenic. And this area grayed out is where the hotel is with the 2 pools and the parks building. And this is the green, and this is the road that leads into Henderson Beach that goes to the garage on the north side of the hotel. So the area that's still to be developed is on the north, and then also there's a Gulfront property that's on the south that abuts the Gulf of Mexico. So currently, on the approved site plan, there's 5 5-story buildings, basically that wrap around in an L shape around a proposed pool. And then there's a large garage that is underneath the buildings that basically interconnect the buildings. So the remaining units in intensity, not including what's already built, is 243 additional condominium units and then 33 additional hotel rooms, as well as 18,659 additional square feet of commercial that consist of restaurant, retail, and bar and general commercial uses. So the 7th amendment plan. I'll do the same thing, try to hold it where everybody can see it. Same layout again. Matthew, scenic, grayed out area that's already built. And you can see we have a series of smaller buildings that are proposed in this area, a lot smaller scale that's proposed. We do have, there's 3 5-story buildings here. That's 4 levels of residential units with parking underneath. These buildings that we call the poolside buildings are 3-story buildings, 2 level of units, parking underneath. We have 18 cottages that are proposed along the east side. Those are 3-story units. We have a 4-story townhome. There's 4 units here. And then up here is a 3-story mixed-use building. So looking at everything that we currently have in the 6th Amendment and looking at what we're proposing in the 7th Amendment, I'll add the hotel rooms with the residential units for easy math. The 7th Amendment proposes 52 less units than the 6th Amendment, and it also proposes 6,772 less square feet of commercial use than the 6th Amendment that we currently have. We just like the revised site plan, the smaller scale of the northern area, and that's a general overview of why we're here and the difference between the 7th Amendment and the 6th Amendment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Council? Any questions?
Are those units on the west side of the property, are they going to be long-term residential or short-term?
Short-term.
So it's all short-term?
Yes, sir.
Everything, okay, thanks.
Mr. Braden?
Thank you. The units that are going to be on, I guess, Matthew, Button Matthew, those are all homes?
Those are
three-story homes?
Single detached condominiums as well.
What's going to be between those and Matthew?
There's an existing parking lot that's there, and that will still be parking as well.
And just for curiosity, what and this the property that's on the Gulf side, there was nothing changing on the footprint, just interior. What's going to be done interior?
It's conversion from residential units to hotel rooms, as well as we're adding additional parking. But you're exactly right. The perimeter of the building did not change. It's still the same.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's
Thank
all,
you.
Mayor.
All right. Is there any further questions? Go ahead, Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks for coming. So, question for you and then a question for staff. The part that is across the street, right there at the intersection of 98 and Matthew, there was a space with a giant chair in it, and people kind of used it to take pictures. Are you familiar with that?
Is it at the northwest corner of the intersection?
It's the south side of the intersection. You may know what I'm talking about. There used to be a hotel there at one point, and it was destroyed. There was a pool in it. When that was removed. Sea Loft?
Yes, ma'am. I think it was the old
Do
Sea
y'all
Lofts.
own that piece as well, or is that someone else?
We do not. No, ma'am.
Okay.
That's someone else.
Okay, gotcha. And then for staff, my question is, I was looking online when I was reviewing this, and it looks like the last amendment on here is, at least for the resort, is the 4th one. I didn't see the 5th or the 6th to review. So I would just, for my own reference, and I'm looking online, the city's website, I would just like to see those. The project's terrific, and I've really enjoyed following it through all the different steps, and I'm missing those.
Well, we can certainly add them.
Thanks.
All right, any further questions for our guest? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
At this point, I can open up for public comment. All right, is there anyone here that wants to weigh in? We can give public comment on this proposed 7th Amendment to this project. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion, if I can get to it in a timely manner. Okay, motion. I move to approve the major deviation to an existing development order and major subdivision identified as Henderson Beach Resort Amendment 7.
I have a motion, I have a second. And I'm assuming no further discussion, so we will go ahead and take it to vote. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Thank you, sir. Sure.
Thank you to staff
Yeah, and hopefully as we continue to line our LDC up with our comp plan and flume and all that, that future developers and business owners will come in and have a much easier task, including our staff, to where everyone can follow an orderly procedure. The city and the staff has made a resound commitment to improving that process of community development. So we appreciate your thanks and your well wishes. All right, that winds up our public hearings. So we'll move on to item 6, the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve A and Bs.
I got a motion.
Second.
Got a second. Mr. Mitchell.
I have a question regarding Airport Road. I see where the road safety audit was included in the packet, but what's the status of the guardrails, please?
Should we pull it for discussion and go ahead and pass consent, or?
I can amend my motion if needed be. I'll amend my motion to just approve item B for now.
I'll amend my second.
Okay, so is there any, we have a motion, we have a second for a development review system software update. I said, let's go. We'll take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. We have to have a change of,
No, we can approve this item separately after it's discussed.
all right. Well, let's go ahead and address this individually. We'll start with the motion in a second and then have discussion.
Technically under Robert's rules, we would generally have a motion first and a second and then discussion.
I'll make the motion to approve B. That's not a.
Okay,
not a
we have a
problem.
motion. Do I have a second? Yeah,
I'm
A.
sorry, A.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second. Now we can have discussion. Go ahead, Steve.
Ask my question.
All right, answer it.
So,
Go ahead, do you want to answer, or do you want Michael?
I would like to take a shot at it.
Sure.
At the December the 2nd meeting, Mr. Burgess is prepared to bring forward a recommendation, one of our continuing services engineers, to look at the design and build of the guardrail system.
Is that good?
I was aware of that. The city manager briefed me on that, but everybody else wasn't. And at the last council meeting, we asked that updates on that be done. The safety audit's fine, but that didn't get that information out. I wanted the city manager to be able to brief everybody else on that. That's it. Thank you.
I got a question, Mayor. So when it comes back, Lance, is he bringing us something back to look at as far as his recommendations?
No, initially, it'll just be council's permission to give this task to one of our continuing services engineers, and that's required by our own procedures and policies. The council has to approve that.
Well, why aren't we doing that tonight?
We were not prepared to do that tonight. I don't have a finalized contract in hand.
Good, fair enough. That's all I got. Thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Ramswell, I saw your name.
thanks. So the report that was attached to this, which was the safety report and the safety audit for that strip of road, it just highlights so many different concerns with the road in general. So, and it's almost not even just that particular stretch of the road, but it's the whole section. And then you look at the traffic numbers, and it's just unreal how much traffic is going there, which really underscores the point that, you know, we need to get on this quickly. So I'm thrilled that you're moving with the guardrail issue rapidly. What is the next step? And I can't recall succinctly or correctly what exactly our direction was. What is the plan for the next steps to get something more permanent and better in place,
And
long-term?
Yeah, incorporate that with maybe a timeline, how you see it playing out.
So when you say better, you mean in addition to the guardrail?
Yeah, I mean, it talks about the fact that it's built on limestone, and when it rains, if it's on limestone, then it becomes very slick, and that's part of the problem. And I know that at one point, the Public Works Committee had talked about doing something to the surface, and that even the striping was slick. So I'm just wondering, the other things that had been discussed in the past and would address some of these issues that the report brings up, when can we get on doing something like that to even more increase the safety level there?
Well, I can tell you that the high friction surfacing is the number one deterrent that the state plans to use when they start their work on this project, along with some additional signage. And I think Michael was in contact with DOT this afternoon, and he may want to bring us up to date on that.
Yeah, Council, as you recall, a few meetings ago, we asked the mayor to sign a letter requesting termination of that LAP agreement. And we did get confirmation from District 3 that from Mr. Perdue that has been terminated. Since it's no longer a LAP type program, it's been transferred over to the Safety Engineering Office at District 3. The fellow in charge of the project now, Mike Lewis, was on vacation all last week, and he's back at work. So I'll be reaching out to him again and trying to get you all some substantive updates every 2 weeks.
Excellent, thank you all.
Mr. Mitchell.
If you recall, in the last meeting, I had the discussion about this, and we voted unanimously to put in the guardrail. That's what we discussed last time. Councilmember Morgan, I brought up about an email. Councilmember Morgan asked if I could produce that email, and I think everybody got that email, okay? Because there was an issue saying that we would compromise our finance on the grant if that was the case. So that email's been provided, so that satisfies that issue. So again, just in recap, we voted unanimously to put the guardrail in, and that's what we're working on right now, to move forward with that. Thank you.
I think we still need to, once you get a contract for the guardrail, we still have to approve it, right? So we still have one more vote for the guardrail.
There will be, because of funding.
Absolutely.
That we need to provide funding.
Absolutely, sure.
We're getting it done, guys, with everyone's help. Council, staff, everyone, so it's just a matter of time. And then on top of the guardrails, then we'll get the abrasive materials in DOT's due time. When you talk to him, kind of give a feel for when in 2020 they may start on the project? Because I was under the impression, Lance, when we met with the secretary, that they were going to do it this year. All right. Let's go ahead and hit the button. We'll take a vote. No further discussion. Vote unanimous, so move. Anything else, Lance? We're good there? All right. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to say that we did lose Maurice Shackelford. He passed away. So if you keep his family in your prayers. And Lance, can you tell me again what you know about the medians between Airport Road and the Marler Bridge, as far as the landscaping and the sprinklers, what's going on there?
Yeah, I think I'm going to defer over to Michael, because he did some additional research since we talked last and has some additional information.
That's right, Lance. So we did provide you all with an irrigation system update 2 weeks ago. Most of that irrigation is, I would say, down in one way, shape, or form. Either the items have been removed or damaged. In addition, we recently, and just kind of coincidentally, the holiday season's coming up, checked all the electrical outlets in those medians for the lighting displays that are coming up. But to answer your question concerning the landscaping, we have not received any plans or any emails or anything to that effect from District 3. We do now have the contact information for the area landscape project manager, and I've reached out to her, and so when we do hear something, I'll pass that right along.
Have you heard from C.W. Roberts as far as turning the sprinklers back on?
On the medians in 98?
Correct.
No, sir, I have not.
Interesting.
Well, again, most of those sprinkler systems, I would say over half of them, the pumps have either been pulled or the system has been damaged in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Well, I did talk to Dusty, the lady that's over the landscaping with FDOT, and the landscaping is not even going to start until sometime in the year 2021. And the sprinklers were supposed to be turned off for C.W. Roberts to do the asphalt work. There's going to be no redo of all that landscaping. What they're planning on doing is enhancing what is there. So she said we desperately need to keep what we have or try to preserve what we have. And they have, according to the project manager that's over the Okaloosa County side, there's one over Okaloosa County side, and there's one that's over the Walton County side. They have told C.W. Roberts to contact the city to let us know that we can turn our sprinklers back on because they're done asphalt work for a while to try to save the grass and the bushes and stuff. So they don't have any, Dusty does not have anything even on the horizon as far as even the landscaping project goes. But that's not even supposed to start till 2021. So I don't know why the wells have never been fixed. I know they've been down all summer long before C.W. Roberts even started the resurfacing. And the only reason the sprinklers were supposed to be turned off was because of them trying to do the resurface so they wasn't soaking down, I guess, wetting the roads. The wells were not supposed to be taken out or cut loose or whatever because the medians were it was all going to be tore up. That was on the west or the east end of Okaloosa County and in Walton County. It looked like that. I mean, the medians. I saw some out the other day mowing them, but they pretty much abandoned them for whatever reason. But I know they did tell me that they did call C.W. Roberts and told them that they can tell the city to turn the sprinklers back on at this time.
Rodney, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Are you talking about the 6 landing portion or the 3R portion?
I'm only talking about from Airport Road to the Destin Bridge, the Muller Bridge.
And I apologize.
Let me chime in real quick, because Rodney, I wanted to follow up with DOT on what you just said, because I'm getting conflicting information, because I was absolutely told that once they started construction, that our crew was to be pulled off and that the DOT contractor was to take over the maintenance of all the medians, including the irrigation and mowing and trash. So I need to find out where the disconnect is, because there's definitely
well, I know the guy, I can't remember his name, the project manager, whatever you want to call it, of this section has only been, I guess, with him for 3 months, I think is what he said. So he wasn't really up to speed on the whole project, but that's what Dusty had, when I talked to her, she was the one. And it took a while to figure out who was in charge of what and what project. And then they called me back and said, well, all the irrigation's been all ripped out and tore up. And I said, no, you're talking about Walton County. And then they said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, Airport Road to Marler Bridge, Destin Bridge to Marler Bridge. And then she had to figure out, well, who was in charge of that section of cause it was really confusing of who was doing what. And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like the city staff is getting different stories, and, so I kept on till I got to the bottom of it to, find out exactly who was in charge and what was going on, and, who was doing what and when, and, so, yeah, I mean, that's what I was told from her last week. And because she had said that, with C.W. Roberts, if they contacted you to tell you to turn the sprinklers back on, I know they're not finished, but apparently they're not going to be working for a while through the holidays or something, I guess.
There's one whole area that they just bulldozed right in front of the Emerald Grand today.
That whole
It's
intersection's
flattened.
been changed.
There's nothing there, no grass, no trees, no nothing, so.
And they're not redoing the landscaping?
No, they're not doing anything.
I think
She said all they would do was enhance what was there. Add some
I always
trees.
thought they were redoing the landscaping, but that
No,
might
so
have been.
that's what I thought. They were ripping it all out. We're just going to let it die and they rip it out. But she said, oh, absolutely not. You need to try to preserve
The
everything.
information I got, Counselor, was from Jim Wood when he attended the TPO meeting a while back. The $1.16 million for landscaping improvements, which could be a wholesale change or enhancements, like you're referring to, was placed in the Transportation Improvement Program. So again, like you said, that may be a delayed project, not something that's coinciding with the 3R.
So we need to get a status on that 1.6 million.
We will go, okay, and we will go ahead and look at kind of fixing that which we can fix on 98 and get that, if it's okay with the city manager after we've conferred, we'll go ahead and move forward doing that.
How much did you say that was?
The amount identified in that TIP project was 1.16.
And it actually said improvements, not new landscaping. Do you recall the
I can search
exact-
through my email here in 1 second if you just give me a moment.
What I'm getting at is if it just says improvements, it almost sounds like they're improving the existing landscape, not replacing all the landscape.
You'll find out. Rodney, what I would recommend is, this sounds like you and Lance and Michael, go ahead as a committee, pin these guys down and find out where we're at, where we're going to be, and then you guys can probably give us a report at our next council meeting.
Well, that was,
I think that'd be the best way, instead of having 3 different people trying to contact. Why don't you guys get together and actually, just kind of like what Lance and I did when we met with the secretary. You 3 get together and in a search committee and find out who's in charge.
Well, I found it all out, because that's what Dusty told me, and that's who Michael's trying to get a hold of, is Dusty as well. And once the landscaping portion of it, she's the one that's going to be ramrodding that portion of it. And I told her, I said, well, as of right now, we're just letting it all die. And she said, oh, no, absolutely not. We'll just enhance what you have. So whatever you do, y'all need to get your sprinklers turned back on and try to keep what you have. I mean, that was her exact words.
Well, the drought's over, fortunately, and now we're in winter months, so the grass has gone dormant, so that's good news for the grass. At least I don't think we'll lose that. I'm not too sure about those trees. And unfortunately, in the wintertime, from now until early spring, we're going to get rain about every 2 to 3 days.
I'm just trying to
So that'll
make sure
help
we're
us.
all on the same page. 'Cause
Sure.
every time you talk to somebody, it's a different story. So.
Yep.
I asked Ray a while ago, but maybe somebody else in here knows what happened to all my stuff that was laying on the desk. I had a stack of papers over here, some notes I had been taking, and it's all gone. I think somebody else has lost some stuff, paperwork that was left on the dais. You know who's come by here and cleaned the dais off? Anybody? Euler?
Let us check with our clerk staff. I think after last meeting, we may have had a little tidying up. We'll be happy to check with that.
If they'd leave our paperwork alone, would be great. I mean, I had a large stack of stuff over here I referred to, and they've thrown it in the garbage, I guess. Maybe when the shredding truck was here, they went to work on the shredding stuff. Lance, can you give us an update on the grant writer?
Well, I can tell you that it is being advertised, and we are fortunate that we have received 4 applicants so far. I've honestly only had a chance to review 2 of the applications, one of them from Illinois, my home state. And he's actually very, very qualified, and I've asked him to send me back some times when he could talk to me this week, because I just don't want to sit on these very long. I'm planning to set a time on Friday to talk with him, and hopefully we can schedule at least one or two of the others to move them to the next level.
Great, the grant writer. Okay, and Lance, I know I did call you one more. He's passed away about maybe getting us some flowers because he done a lot for the city. But I did speak with his son, and they're having, I think, a gathering, I believe at Harbor Docks early December. So, in case you haven't seen anything or don't know what to do, I don't think they're having the services, but they will be having a celebration of life or something at Harbor Docks sometime early December.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I had not heard yet. And his daughter-in-law was an employee of ours at the community center for several years, so
I know that.
Our sympathy goes out to the family.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. So to start, the appointee that I had to Public Works and Safety mentioned to me that they were supposed to be on the agenda for tonight to present the half-cent sales tax findings, and it wasn't on the agenda when it came out, and he reached out to their liaison and never heard anything back. So they were prepared to present tonight, and it's not here, so if, I guess, Ray or whomever's in charge of putting that on here, they were apparently ready to go. So just wanted to mention that so it can get placed on here for next time.
I apologize, I was not aware of that.
You aren't the liaison, so. Okay, so I had a question about an email that we received today regarding a stormwater box at Indian Bayou. Could somebody explain what that's about and the repairs that were emergency related?
I'll take a stab at it, and if I don't do so well, I'll get Michael to fill in the gaps. There was a stormwater box that I'm going to just say in layman's term was kind of band-aided together when it was put in out there. The pipes, my understanding, were too short, so they tried to extend them in order to reach the box, which worked for a little while, and then it failed. So our crew went out and made good repairs on it to fix that problem, but in the process, we incurred some expense. Councilman Braden brought it to my attention at that point because I was unaware of it, and I asked our Lorraine Barish, the administrative assistant in my office, if she could look at some of the grant money that we had not used in association with projects in that area. She did, and asked if we could add that project to it. And today found out that just south of $10,000 of that project is going to be reimbursed to the city. And I believe it's at full functionality. And if I left anything out?
Yeah, the contractor, that was a NIFWIF project from several years ago. And the contractor that was doing that job apparently bought an insufficient length of pipe and tried to make some extensions on a pipe to the drain box, and they leaked. I mean, they sucked dirt and it created sinkholes on the surface. And in addition, the drain box itself was damaged in the process of the project, and they literally tried to Humpty Dumpty that box back together with cement. It was broken, and they tried to put it back together and save that expense.
Was this the same, or was this a part of that big Indian Bayou stormwater project that had issue after issue after issue? Is this the same company that we had problems with then?
Yes, ma'am.
And Lance, do you recall, did we pursue any sort of remediation or anything of that nature? Because there were some significant problems.
Yeah, my understanding is that company had to put up a bond for that project, and we retained either all or a large portion of that bond when we dismissed them.
Okay, good. So is that part of what he's talking? No, he was talking about a different pot of money. Okay. All right. Well, clearly we won't be using that company again.
If I recall, I think it was Jeff Burns at the time chased him down and put the application on the bond before he left.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind, Ms. Ramshaw. Did we not have a project manager or engineer or something overseeing that project? I can't recall.
I would have to find out for you. I mean, I don't want to assume, but I mean, I think that the contractor was supposed to be providing that.
Yeah, I don't think we had a project manager on that one, somebody kind of overseeing the quality of work and that kind of stuff. I think he was.
I think Joe Bodie was one of the ones that actually went through and helped remedy some of the issues that we had to take care of after the fact, problems with the swales and things of that nature, but I don't know if he was the contact for the whole project or just the repairs. Anything else on that? Anyone? Okay. The third thing I have is I wanted to see about requesting either a special session or an executive session. I'm not sure what the proper form would be, but to discuss legal representation and legal fees being incurred as a result of the public records request issues.
Workshop format or special meeting?
I believe Ms. Ramsell's referring to a shade session under the statute. That is something that we could look into. I believe, Ms. Kopp, don't we have to call that at a regular meeting? And
Yeah,
then-
but if we're talking about just public records request, we can't do that in the shade. We would have to do it at either a special meeting, a regular meeting, or a workshop, unless we're talking about litigation expenses specifically, because we have two different things. We have litigation regarding public records, and we also have the public records requests associated with that litigation and not associated with that litigation. So I'm not sure what your
I would
question.
say regarding the litigation.
Okay, so then, yeah, we'd have to announce it at a public meeting, and then we would advertise and have the executive session.
Okay. I'd like to request that that's put on the next agenda for us to discuss.
Do you want to do like a 5 o'clock or 5:30 before the 6 o'clock meeting, basically?
I think that seems to work best for everyone. Am I wrong?
It could be done.
I heard it one groan.
Just to the 5 o'clock, but another day at 6, but yeah, I'll make it, sorry.
We
It's
might,
off-seat.
due to advertising and newspaper deadlines, I will defer to Ray, but we might need to do it on December 9th rather than the 2nd, correct?
I was going to recommend December 9th if you want to, before the special session. You have a special meeting on the 9th. Would you like that to be at 5 o'clock or?
Time is our special meeting?
Special meeting at 6.
You think it'll take an hour?
I don't think so unless we all argue.
Well, we can do
Imagine
it at
that.
5:30, and if it goes beyond, then it goes beyond.
Just goes beyond, right? We just start a little later.
Yeah.
We've seen that happen before, so, yeah, we can do that, right? You got it?
So the announcement is for the executive session to be held on December 9th at 5:30 related to the, what is the caption of the litigation? We'll just be very specific for the record.
Sure.
We're announcing a special executive session of the City Council in the case of Point Mezzanine versus City of Destin, case number 2019 CA 003733F in Okaloosa County Circuit Court. Session will commence at 5:30 on December 9th.
Perfect. Thank you. And that's all I have.
And then at 6 PM, we have a special meeting?
That is to discuss the short-term rental Burt Harris litigation. Or,
Gotcha.
I'm sorry, it's not litigation. It is pre-suit notices.
Yeah, okay. I'm getting my calendar set up right now. So we've got our regular meeting on the 2nd, yep. And then we've got one on the 9th, and then one on the 16th, and then
Can I request our clerk send out calendar invites for all this? Thank you. That helps me tremendously.
Yeah. But if Bill can't make it, he can give us information for us to take in.
All right, Mr. Mitchell.
I don't know if you want to take a break or not. This is going to be a while.
It's only 7:10, so you got 20 minutes.
First of all, reference what Dr. Ramswell just said about the committees. That speaks to exactly what I talked about at the vision session. We have nothing set up, okay? And it's plain and simple. We need to tell the chairman to reach out to Ray. I had absolutely no problem doing that. I've said it for the last 2 vision sessions. We don't have a policy in place. And I cracked that code because I was the chairman of the Public Works Committee. And what I would do is, once we had a unanimous vote, I'd call Ray, and there's a place on the agenda for that to happen. We're not telling the committees. And if we did that, we wouldn't have to worry about the liaison dropping the ball. So again, I'd urge you to educate the chairpersons of each committee, because it's real simple to get on the agenda, and Ray does a fantastic job. So that's that. Late this afternoon, I sat down and typed this out for several reasons: to stay on point, not to skip anything, and in hopes of speeding this along. So forgive me for reading part of this presentation. Over the past several months, I've had numerous people accuse me of showboating, hot-dogging, grandstanding, simply due to the fact that I ask questions and don't just rubber stamp material, but put before me. So trust me, if that's what you think, after tonight, I'll probably get an Academy Award. One of my favorite sayings is, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So here's a fact. After I am finished with this presentation, some will ask what got him so worked up or why he's mad. And the simple fact is, I'm not mad at all. I am doing the job I was elected to do and also setting the record straight. It's that simple. It's very important for all of us to understand that the purpose of any investigation is to prove or disprove an allegation. It's just as important to prove a person innocent as it is to find them guilty. All of us sitting up here have our own skill sets, and most of you know for 38 years I was a federal agent, and my job was to conduct investigations and, when necessary, make arrests and seizures. 24 of those 38 years, I served as a senior manager with responsibilities far greater in number and scope than the city of Destin. Although we all face many challenges, trust me, if we work together as a team, we can and will move this great city forward. At some point in time, I hope some of you finally understand that when I make a definitive statement, I have the facts to back it up. Over the years sitting out in the audience and now sitting up here, I have heard statements evolving around making decisions based on political reason. If I vote for this or that, it will hurt me politically, etc. I don't vote or make decisions based on politics. And if you're not happy with what I do, at the next election, vote me out. Over the years sitting in the audience and now up here, I have also repeatedly heard council members provide information and have watched as staff, in some cases, have disrespected that, paid little or no attention, and or totally dismissed the information that was provided by council members. As a recent example, numerous times this year, Dr. Ramswell has provided information from state documents, PD&Es, studies, and various other documents that clearly state 4 lanes associated with the Crosstown Connector. But as previously stated, her information was dismissed and ridiculed by many. I stated earlier this year that I asked the city clerk for countless documents to educate myself on the Crosstown Connector so that I could make an informed decision. And due to the lies that some gave me was the sole reason I voted no against the project. My job here is to represent the people, to make sure we are good stewards of our city's money, and to give the city manager the tools he needs to do his job. I have sat here and listened to state officials lie directly to us or have them catch them later in lies and follow-up emails. I have had staff misrepresent the facts or lie, and these types of actions cannot and should not be tolerated. I have observed staff, once a problem is identified, work on future corrections but fail to fix the original problem. This is akin to shutting or nailing a barn door shut after the cattle get out. to make sure it never takes place again, but failing to go retrieve the cattle that escaped. Let me be very clear on this point. I know, as a council member, I only have the authority to hire or fire a couple of staff members. But understand this loud and clear. If it ever got to the point, the council ever considered removing a city manager, although I can't fire any other employee, I certainly can move forward to defund positions. Folks, plain and simple, it's time to work together as a team and get things done. I also strongly urge any staff member, again, a big if again, if anybody has any information regarding any irregularity, now is the time to bring this forward to the attention of the city manager. After an audit or investigation is completed, and if an issue is identified that involves a person, is the wrong time to come forward. So again, if anybody has any information, now's the time to speak with the city manager. We all want to move forward, and we want the best for this city, but I have said many times, until we clean up the sins of the past, we will not be able to move forward. With that said, as I continue, and this is going to be the most important thing I say out of all this, it should be noted, the mistakes, be they honest or otherwise, issues concern raised herein are not directed toward the majority of our hard-working city employees. And moving forward, even though some may think this is giving the city yet another black eye, our management team and this city council is going to be judged on how we move forward to correct the issues that have already been identified and any additional mistakes, issues, concerned discovered during this process. So let's get started. As many of you know, 6 weeks ago, this council was presented a bunch of contracts, continuous service contracts, which based on several issues were pulled off the consent agenda for discussion. I asked the staff to provide me with documents regarding the APT contract, and the following email was presented from one staff member to another. I'll also point out that tonight, item 4B is a step in the right direction for the future, but we have been asking questions specifically about the APT contract since before Halloween, and we're yet to get an answer. Okay? A staff member wrote this to another staff member, in part. Attached is the most updated version of Mr. Menschel's request. Upon review of the last several years, APT has missed a few items included in the contract bid. First of all of these items in yellow are the items that were missed, and that's certainly more than a few. We have spoken with APT, and the missed items are being corrected immediately. We need to amend the contract to clear up some of the verbiage and amend the requirements of some of the facilities. For example, the City Hall Annex does not have a sprinkler system, so it needs to be amended on the contract. And it goes on. I asked for city staff, and you all have received an initial packet of information, invoices. That original packet was 60 pages in depth, okay? It was 60 pages. And the entire thing, all of the amounts and services was all redacted, okay? Why was it redacted? Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. I'm just saying, why would you send something, why would we get something like this that's useless in what we're asking for? But at any rate, the first packet we got was 60 pages with everything being redacted. Turned around and said, okay, I'd like the unredacted 60 pages. We turned around and got a second packet last week, and that packet was 58 pages, not 60. Of those 58 pages, 6 of them were duplicates, okay? Of the 58 pages, 22 of them didn't correspond. So we didn't get packet for packet. So again, we have nothing to correspond with, okay? Here's some questions. Again, we may or may not have answers tonight, but we have been waiting since before Halloween for some simple answers, and we haven't gotten them, okay? I know we're going to move forward and correct it. The city manager talked about that in item 4B. Again, that's taking care of future problems, but we still haven't addressed the main issue, okay? First of all, here's just a partial list of questions. I already talked about the packet being redacted. Who redacted the information? The multicolored spreadsheet that we got that was in response to this is chock with errors. It's error upon error upon error. We can't keep producing information and provide it to us that have so many errors, okay? Apparently, nobody reviewed it, nobody looked at this stuff going out. The contract that says change contract, no sprinkler backflow at City Hall Annex, and there are several other staff observations or errors that were discovered based on my series of questions. This speaks to a host of mistakes, again, be they honest or otherwise, systematic failures and gross mismanagements of these contracts. They're not being reviewed. We have multiple years of services not being performed, and nobody caught it. Okay? Again, moving forward, we've taken some corrective action. But I sat here tonight waiting to hear answers about APT, and we got none. Moving on. Moving forward, this is what's important. The city manager is working on establishing new policies and procedures to correct the issues, problems that we discovered, and we need to identify any other sins of the past that require corrective action. If this contract is chock with this many errors, and let me make sure everybody understands this, and I didn't say it in the onset, you have not heard and you will not hear me make any allegation of any type of criminal activity. I have not said that. I don't know what I don't know, and I'm not going to make that type of statement. It may be straight up laziness, it may be somebody lackadaisical, whatever it is, there's a host of problems here. Moving on, okay? Based on the information supplied by staff that states, in part, upon review of the last several years, APT has missed a few items, and again, it's a lot more than a few, okay? Based on the chart provided by staff, APT, again, has missed more than those items. Second, as a result of the missed items over the years, it appears APT has violated the terms of their contract and should be held in default of that contract. We should immediately start the process to rebid our security contract. We can't allow a company to have this many mistakes and nobody's taking any action. Simply put, we don't know what we don't know. Again, I'm going to emphasize, I'm not saying, haven't said, and won't say, I'm not making any allegation about any criminal activity. It could be as simple as sloppiness, the procedures that we didn't have in place that we're going to put in place, but nobody has talked about the corrective actions of this. And that's what I wanted to hear, and we didn't hear it. At this point, I make a motion to have the city, well, before I make the motion, I reached out to the Auditor General of Florida, and they told us they would be happy to do an audit. The purpose of an audit, again, is not to prove somebody guilty. It can be just as easily innocence. Just because an audit is done doesn't mean anybody's done something wrong. But if we have this much wrong with one contract, we don't know what else is wrong. I spoke to Representative Ponder. If we ask the Auditor General direct for the audit, it's going to cost us money. If a state representative does it, it's on the state dime. For that reason, at this point, I want to make a motion to have the city manager send a letter to Representative Ponder asking his assistance with the coordination with the Auditor General to conduct an audit of the city contracts and finance department as soon as it can be scheduled.
I'll make the second for discussion.
I have a motion, I have a second. Let's discuss.
All right, well, I mean, I'll ask the simple question, which is, don't we do an audit every year? Or aren't we mandated to have an audit every year anyway?
State statute requires an audit be performed. Currently, our audit for the past fiscal year 2019 is scheduled to begin, I believe, the week of December the 2nd.
So can these issues that Steve has just brought up, can those be, I guess, given to the auditor and ask them to look into this rather than going outside and going through Mel Ponder and all the rest of this? Can we just have whoever our auditor is, which I assume our auditor is not a local auditor, it's somebody that either the state contracts for us or we contract with to do this. Can we front load this and just have them do what Steve is thinking that maybe the state auditor needs to do for us?
I can tell you that we go out for competitive bidding process to get these auditors. The current auditor I know is out of New York City. I don't know the name of them. And as far as if we can piggyback this current contract with additional items? I think I would just have to ask, because I don't know the answer to that question right now.
Well, I mean, that would be part of the bid process, right? I mean, we would put that in the bid request?
Well, it's not.
They're already under contract to come in for fiscal year 2019 audit.
Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, I would have our, before we go to the state and Representative Ponder, I would like to see maybe the city reach out to our auditor now. Is it the same person who it's been? To reach out to our auditor and maybe have Steve get with city staff and have a, list of questions for the auditors or areas of concern to look at and see what our auditor comes back with in terms of maybe renegotiating our contract with them for this year to see, we're going to increase the scope of work. And I would certainly like to go that route rather than the state. But, if any members of the council are amenable to that, I can make a substitute motion or make a motion after we take a vote on this one.
For clarity, Kyle or Kim, you can answer this. I want to make sure we're not confused between our annual fiscal audit to making sure our books line up and what Mr. Mitchell's asking, that we get like the Attorney General to come here and make sure there's no malfeasance with our contract procedure, which is two different type of audits. Do you understand? I just want everybody to understand we're not talking about a fiscal audit. We're talking about an investigative audit on
Like a forensic audit, or
on our practices and if there's any areas of malfeasance or anything like that. In other words, we're inviting the state to come in and evaluate our staff and our procedures, when I would much feel a lot more comfortable if Mr. Mitchell and our two attorneys in every department that he has concerns with take an internal audit before we invite not only the appearance that bringing a state attorney general in here to check us out, which is not good for the city politically, but just morale of our staff to feel like they don't have an opportunity to address each one of these needs in an appropriate manner first. So I just want to make sure we understand what we're talking about, two different audits here.
First of all, Mayor, it's not the Attorney General, it's the Auditor General. Okay, that's number one. Number two, this has been going on since 2017 at least, and nobody caught it. Okay, we already have city staff sending emails to cities. It's not a question of if this happened. We know it happened, okay? And our checks and balances failed. Again, moving forward, this simple contract is chocked with all of these errors. I haven't looked, it's not my place to keep looking at these things. This thing all started when we pulled the contracts from the consent agenda 6 weeks ago. And this was blatant looking at it, okay? Doing just some routine queries, these are the things that staff need to do, okay? But it fell through. And then once we called these questions in order, staff went back and reported that, yes, there's lots of problems. So it's not a question, did it happen? We know it happened. The black eye, it's not a black eye. People can make mistakes. What I've said is we're all going to be judged, here and staff, by how we clean up our actions. This is not the only problem we've been faced with in the last couple of weeks. And all we keep doing is doing these Band-Aid approaches to keep things from happening in the future, but we don't correct the immediate problem. This is a problem. First of all, we don't know. Here's a question. Okay, we'll get to the questions because I said we can get to that. Why did we get the redacted copies to begin with? Question one. Yes, sir, anybody. City manager, whoever can answer.
I did not distribute those copies, and I did not get to see those copies, so I don't have the answer for you.
Who sent them out?
Okay, the invoices that you see in your packet that are redacted are from the subcontractor to APT. They're not redacted from APT to the city. If you notice to the bill too, it'll say Advanced Protective Technologies, and it's from their subcontractor. And they've been through several subcontractors, I believe, during the course of this one contract that we had with them. And possibly, I can't speak for APT, but maybe it was just something they missed as well. They weren't checking in on their subs. The APT does not do the fire extinguisher and fire safety audits. That is done by a subcontractor. They do the monitoring and fire monitoring.
Okay, moving on. Okay. Again, we got these documents, and we had questions about them, and to send these things out, all it does is muddy the water, okay? That's the first thing. Go ahead.
Can I add one other thing?
Absolutely.
When we spoke to APT about the redactions, they did not want us to see what they paid their subs.
Proprietary information, basically.
For some reason or another, they didn't want to reveal what they were paying their subcontractors for contractual services that we pay for.
They probably didn't want us to know that they didn't do the work that we contracted them with either, okay? The other thing, go ahead, please.
The chart that was
Let's
put together.
let's go in order. Really, it was supposed to be Rodney's turn.
Well, I'm not
when you
finished.
stepped in.
I'm not finished. Okay?
We have a list, and you're number 3 on the list, Ray, if you want to put it up there, Mr. Mitchell, because...
I didn't finish, I hadn't stopped, I just paused.
Yeah, but I recognized Mr. Morgan, and then, and I was supposed to recognize Mr. Braden.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to recognize you in due time, Mr. Braden.
I thought we had discussion on the motion that was on the floor. Okay. My thoughts on it is, I mean, every point that Mr. Mitchell has made is right on. It's 100%. I mean, it's we need answers. And I know the same person that's doing our yearly audit is not going to come in and look at all our contracts, and I wouldn't think it'd be the same guy. So giving our contracts to the same person, or trying to put it in the same contract or whatever next year, we're just wasting time. So I don't know who would get to come in and try to go through all of them and find out what's going on and what's not. And sometimes it's good to get somebody on the outside to come in and give us a different look and just go through it and give us their thoughts of what we can do and how we can run the city better.
Braden, one potential option before the council is Ms. Kopp and I are willing to exercise a certain degree of oversight over an internal audit by the city, in which we would, of course, be representing the city council as we represent y'all. And the city would conduct an internal audit, and we would put together a list of any issues that any council member has throughout the course of this audit. And then Ms. Kopp and I would present our findings and recommendations to the council after we have concluded our report. That's an option on the table for the council. You don't have to do it, but we're offering our services for that.
And I just like the idea of doing it in-house. Ms. Ramswell, would you like to? You're next. And then Mr. Mitchell, and then Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. My first question actually builds on the chart that we received a couple weeks ago that's highlighted with different things. Who put that together?
That was put together by Deputy Public Works Director Tim Petenpaul.
Okay, and I don't see him here tonight because I'd like to ask him some questions about it. Has it?
Mr. Petenpaul is no longer employed by the city.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for letting me know. I did not know that. All right, so moving on from that, I know from having sat up here 5 years, there have been several incidents in which there has been money expended or different questionable situations that the city has had to correct. I know one of them had to do with repayment of, I believe it was a FEMA benefit. That's probably been 5 years ago. I know there was an issue with the Heritage Park invoices a few years ago. I know there was an issue with payment for a public benefit that was part of a DO that was not completed, that was done erroneously. I know there were problems with waste management billing and collection when it was done in-house. So I personally, just in the time I've sat up here, know of multiple situations in which there have been issues with money going in or out, and it really would have benefited from somebody really, and I don't know if forensic is the right word or not, but somebody doing a real thorough sit-down and look at comparison at the different contracts, go through them line by line. And that's something that, I don't think our regular auditor would do. I mean, they're not going to go back retroactively and look at contracts and say, well, this was missed and this was missed. And it just so happens that, we happen to find it. But the point is there that if a random bill or a contract like this that we've chosen to just look at has this many problems, what's out there that we don't know? And I'm not blaming any one person. Mr. Menschel said the same thing. Not most, but a lot of our staff is new. And this is, again, correcting mistakes that maybe have occurred in the past, that I think in order to get on this path of being totally transparent, making sure everybody's on the same page, we're all clear, there's no more, oh gosh, something else has popped up. I think it's a good idea. I really do. I had something else to say, and it's left my mind at the moment, but yeah, I'll stop there because I can't think of anything else right now that I meant to say. But
Steve, can I ask you a quick question? Numerically, how many irregularities that have you identified so far?
Irregularities, let me just say this as for example. They did annual inspections, for example, twice in 1 year, an annual inspection. Well, that's not an annual inspection. The other question that has been not answered, in the contract, nowhere in the contract or in the scheduled fees does it show that they're supposed to charge us a service fee for an annual contract, okay? There's a host of questions I've posed over a month ago, and we still have no answers. There's countless, nickel and dime things that I don't have they're questionable, okay? They're irregularities, if you will. There might be a reasonable explanation, but in none of the contracts that that the staff has provided us speak to in any way having a service fee added to an annual inspection. They came to City Hall 3 times in 1 year, and each time for an annual inspection, and they did a service charge on each one, okay? There needs to be more coordination. A lot of it is mismanagement, if you will, okay? I don't have all the data, and I haven't answered the question. Another question comes up is, have we verified how much money we're owed? Have we overpaid? Do we have an answer on that yet?
Outside of the APT contract, what have you analyzed thus far?
Nothing.
Just APT?
Correct.
Is the intent, if we did an in-house audit, how many, we've got, how many continuing services contracts do we have?
But it's not even the contracts. I mean, like the things that I mentioned, it's just things
I'm
that
trying to
are not...
limit this, I'm trying to narrow the scope so we can get something to move forward with tonight, because we've got what I'm seeing from the other end, and it's not, I'm not saying it's not justified, but I'm seeing frustration of a buildup of a lot of different stuff that's bleeding into this one issue. And what I'd like to do is get us a narrowed scope to where we can delve into this and actually develop new strategies, new procedures, and do so in a way that deals with what I'm hearing from the other end of the dais. How many continuing do we have?
Approximately a dozen.
And I'm not suggesting that if we did this audit review that it would stop just with continuing, but if we narrowed the scope to just the continuing services contract, because I'm not thrilled with the APT services we've got, just what we've discussed thus far. It seems like this contract needs to be blown up and we need to readjust it, because it sounds like these guys are making a lot of money off of this continuing service contract. We're not getting a whole lot out of it other than nickel and dimed all over the place. So is it amenable to develop an audit of just the continuing services contracts and then go from there, see what we can improve? I mean, am I off base?
First of all, as I said before, we don't know what we don't know, okay? These are just questions about this one contract. In response to, I just want to answer a couple of other comments. Our attorney volunteered and suggested that they might be available. If you recall, in our last meeting, they told us how busy they were and whatnot, and we're going to try and contract out for additional legal support, okay? We shouldn't spend the money, and they have a lot more important things to do than this. We have the opportunity, again, no one says anybody done anything criminal. There could be mistakes, it could be whatever, as I previously said. Why would anybody up here not want a review? Review can't hurt us. If nobody's done anything wrong, if there's no irregularity, we get a gold star and we move on. As I said, how we respond to this. This has been out here for 6 weeks, and I'll ask again, do we know tonight if we have had any overpayments? Yes or no?
Are you directing that to me?
Well, whoever can answer it.
Well, as you and I discussed in my office, we both agreed that we have overpaid.
Okay, but we don't know how much.
We do not.
Okay,
I do not.
And that's what I'm talking about. We've set up a policy to set up policies in the future, but we haven't addressed this. There's no corrective actions about this. We don't even know how much we've overpaid, and nobody from staff, when you gave your report, you didn't say this is how we're moving forward to correct this problem. And that's what's troublesome. I understand we're going to move forward and make sure it doesn't happen again, but we're not addressing this problem. And that's what I want to hear. That's what I wanted to hear. This is what we're going to do. This is how much money. We're going back to them and say, we want a refund, we want this. And then why are we even not considering revoking the permit, revoking the contract based on what they did? So those are the kind of things I'm talking about. Why would we be afraid to have an outside entity come in at no cost to us and review this stuff? Chances are there's not going to be anything wrong. If you're driving down the street and you look in your rearview mirror and there's a sheriff's office car behind you, if you're not drunk, if you have your insurance and everything else, you're not going to be afraid. Okay? Why are we so hesitant to get somebody in here? It is not a black eye. It happened. And again, I'm not blaming anybody. What I'm saying is we all have to do our due diligence to take corrective action to straighten it out. Okay? Well, you know what? Our people miss this year after year. Our staff miss this. Okay? The people responsible for looking at this contract. So policies and procedures moving forward may straighten out future contracts, but it's not doing anything to fix this.
Steve, I got your back here, man, but I don't believe we need the Auditor General to straighten out our APT contract. We can do that internally.
I didn't say the APT. I want them to review a contract, everything, to see what else we may be deficient in.
I'm throwing the olive branch out here to say, why don't we look at, to begin with, the continuing services contract? Because if we need to go back.
Who do you suggest do that?
I'm suggesting you do it. I'm suggesting the attorneys.
I'm not an employee. It's not my job to do that.
I'll make a substitute motion to have the our two city attorneys investigate or look over our continuing services contracts for any irregularities and clarify. I'm making a motion and clarify our APT contract.
I got a substitute motion.
I'll second it.
I second it.
Can I offer an amendment to that to the extent that I don't believe we need the Auditor General, but I do believe that if you're going to go down this route, you will want the assistance of some form of an accountant, and to a forensic degree. My suggestion is if you can amend the motion to include the attorneys seek out a third-party auditor. Basically, you can get these folks at an hourly rate, and what we'll do is simply, I would suggest somebody reach out to Carr Riggs They don't perform our financial audit, and they could probably give us a forensic auditor, and we could probably delve into this at least to a degree that we can take a bite at the apple, figure out what's going on with the APT contract, and then move amicably from there without blowing everything up.
Mr. Morgan, are you?
So I would amend my motion to include a third party.
How about my second?
Second concurs.
Okay, so second concurs.
I have a question for Mr. Mitchell.
Just put yourself on the list. We'll go first with Rodney, and then next will be Ms. Ramswell, and then you, Kyron.
Thanks, Mayor.
This is discussion on the substitute motion in the second. Go ahead, Rodney.
With my experience, I mean, I was hot and heavy on the first couple of years in this council, and every contract I looked at, every bill that came through from a contractor, 90% of them, there was something wrong with it. We had a bill come through. I mean, I kept finding them until I was sick of finding them, and nothing was getting done. Nothing was changing because we had the same staff, and they were all in on it. But we had one in a parking lot. They fixed a stormwater drain or a pipe. I went out and measured the asphalt patch, and it was like 21 feet by 14 feet. And they claimed the contractor billed us for removing like 50 or 60 dump truck loads of dirt and then putting it back in this hole. And when I questioned the staff, he's like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of dirt. Let's go back and look at that. And then when they did, they about cut it in half. And every time I would find something like that, I mean, I was finding invoices that were being paid for a job that was done that I was personally on, driving by it every day going home, and it was billed for things that was done that was pieces of equipment that was supposed to be on that job site, on that little repair job that was never there. And I know for a fact it wasn't there because I was in the hole twice when it was being done, but it was charged for, and at like $2,500, and it was paid. And all that problem, and I got sick of dealing with it because nothing was ever getting done. And the problem always came back to when when a contractor comes in and gives that invoice to the department head for him to stamp it or sign off on it and date it, and then it goes to finance department for payment. That department head, they just rubber stamping it. One of them's no longer with us, we found out tonight. They don't ever go out and look to see what's going on, what certain contractors are doing and what they're not doing. They're not double checking. When it comes across their desk, they're like, yep, looks good to me, send it on. And I got sick of finding the stuff and nothing being straightened out. So I know where Steve's coming from, his frustrations, because I had the same frustrations. But I think, an auditor coming in here, yeah, he's going to go through these contracts and find, mistakes and straighten them all out, maybe give us ideas. But as far as, getting reimbursed for these things, we're not, because our department heads signed off on it, that it was completed, and they did the work, and they got paid for it, and they moved on down the street. So that's the biggest problem. How are you going to fix it? And is the staff overseeing it? And I think we're headed in that direction to straighten all that out. But I think an audit, would be good of some sort. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. So, just sitting here listening to Rodney, we're in the same boat. We were elected the first time at the same time. And just like we see here with Mr. Mitchell, we were both just, on top of everything at every meeting. And it almost became known as we were constantly bashing staff. We were constantly bashing the city manager or whoever. And the irony is, as I sit here tonight, and not just tonight, but in other nights, and I see the fire and I see the gusto, and it reminds me of where we were, and it was like we just gave up. We had no support. We'd bring things up, and it was like, oh, well, nothing's ever done. Now, that was with a different staff. We have a completely different makeup, and a lot of the same folks that have been here for a while that are terrific, a lot of new folks that are terrific. And so, I'm thinking here, you're the one that caught Gulf Power charging us for lights that weren't even in the city. So there's another example, sprinklers that are out, and that's a different type of audit. But the point being, our staff is busy. There's a lot going on. Our attorneys are busy. There's a lot going on. Our city manager, everyone is busy. I don't want to task them with something else to do. And we need an expert to come in and do this sort of an audit. Let you guys continue working on the things that you're supposed to be doing and that you're fully tasked with doing. And I have nothing to hide. I mean, please come in, help us, remedy the mistakes, the issues of the past so that we've got this clean slate. We're moving forward. We know everything's accurate. It's been tested, if you will, by an auditor. Wonderful. Now we can all move forward knowing that we're all clear and that nothing else, at least financially, is going to pop up and bite us in the rear end. So I support this.
Mr. Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Mitchell in a minute, but first I wanted to bring this up. I've been through technically 6 city managers, actually 5, considering we hired one twice. And other than Parker's father, I think I'm the most senior council member that's been involved in a lot of this stuff. And I can't tell you how many city staff members that I have seen come and go in the last 16 years that I've been in council. We have tried to do the best we can at cleaning house in a lot of different ways. People who we felt that weren't doing their job properly. For various reasons, like I said, we've changed city managers a lot. Bringing in an outside auditor is a good idea in a way, but we need to clean our own house, and that's done internally the way that that Mr. Morgan's motion is. And by doing that, I think we show a little bit better of our monitoring of our own house that we haven't been able to do in the past. And if the city attorneys will agree to this, because we've allowed Councilman Destin to work with the Gulf Power people, I would like to see if Mr. Mitchell would be able to involve himself a little bit in the audit, in a sense that if the attorneys would allow him to help go over that, since it's at least with the ADP, and then we go from there. And I think that would satisfy some of the things that are going on, because I do believe we probably have problems, but I don't think it's with our immediate current staff. I think we've had problems in the past. And yes, Rodney is probably right. There was some rubber stamping going along, but it's because in our current staff, we have a lot of learning curves. They're still learning. They're still finding things. I mean, our community development department is going through with a fine-tooth comb everything that's been done in the past and finding those mistakes and correcting those mistakes, zoning problems and those issues. And I think they're doing an outstanding job of trying to find that. And I think if we do that with all the departments, as we're trying to do, by digitizing and going through all of our public records and stuff, we're finding things that they probably missed in the past that have been locked in a vault and collecting dust. So I think internally, in-house is the best way to do it. The buck will stop with us. We're the final decision on whatever happens. But I think, and I appreciate what Mr. Mitchell's doing, and I think, that's the part of being personally involved as a council member, and not just, just coming to the meetings all the time, and everybody's got a good point, but we can sit here and talk about it all night, but we need to make a decision and get on so we can start this process. And I think that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I think for the first time in city's history, we've got a pro-smart growth council, and it's kind of evident by the problems we deal with today. And part of getting this consensus and changing the direction in Destin was involved a complete turnover of our staff. And I'm here today. For 3.5 years I've been here, and we've got very few people in the staff that were here when I got here. And so there has been a tremendous learning curve and culture change, and cultures are very hard to change. and I think we're in the process of doing it. And I've sat up here and I've voted to, terminate the employment of several members of city staff, but I am confident and I do trust the staff we have now, and if I didn't, I would probably vote to terminate the employment of more staff. But I do trust them, and I trust both of our attorneys immensely, and I trust Lance immensely to do the right things, even if things have been done wrong in the past. And I think we're on the right track. I think that internal audit, because of the trust I have in our attorneys and their judgment, is the way to go. And yeah, I do think there's a difference between bringing up real valid concerns about our medians and about our APT contracts and our other contracts and bashing staff, but on the other hand, and I don't defend staff often, but on the other hand, they sit here and talk about how every single invoice that comes across their desks has been rubber stamped. And I think that's a little unfair to assume that maybe that has happened some in the past, and it might still happen some today. But to sit up here and, pretty much accuse every department head of rubber stamping every invoice that's come across their desk and never following up on anything is a bit disingenuous, and I think would qualify as bashing staff. So, in terms of morale, that's, I want to do that because I am happy with the staff that we've created over the past 3.5 years, and it hasn't been easy, and I would like to continue some forward momentum, and, that's what I got. Thanks. But hopefully we can vote.
I'll go, Mr. Mitchell, you have the floor, and then after that, we'll go ahead and take it to a vote unless somebody wants to weigh in on any of his comments. Go ahead, Mr. Mitchell.
First of all, I will pull my original motion, okay, and support the substitute motion for now. I just want to clarify a few things I've heard. First and foremost, you heard me say in the onset that the city manager is working to straighten this out moving forward. That's number one. I acknowledge that. We are doing that. I said it over and over and over. My issues were not that we're not going to correct the things in the past, but some of the existing things we haven't done enough on. I never said, okay, just for clarity, that every department head, I haven't accused anybody of anything because it's not my job to do that, okay? I don't have enough information to do that and wouldn't do that. I'm not saying everybody rubber stamp stuff. In this particular case, Lance just said that, yes, there were mistakes. I'm okay with that. We know that, but yet we still have fallen short only in the corrective action on this. I feel very comfortable that staff's going to move forward with these policies. We have a lot of good, hard-working staff. Nobody's accusing anybody of anything. All of the discrepancies I found, you haven't heard me say so-and-so did this wrong or that because I don't know. The other thing is, from the standpoint of personnel, it's not my job to correct anybody. It's Lance's job to do that. It's none of our job to do that. So this has been a good discussion because it's showing things, and it's a conversation that's been long overdue. If nothing else, like I said before, people will look at us on what we're doing to remedy the situation. If everybody is human and everybody makes mistakes, okay? These could be honest mistakes. Again, it may not be anything, but we're going to be looked at in a positive way because we've identified this. It's okay. If everybody wants to call it a black eye, so be it. But the important thing is everybody up here is talking professionally, and we're going to get something done. And my last comment is, as I said before, I kind of sit here and smile about this. I am not mad at all. I have nothing to be mad about. This is nothing personal. This is business. I'm elected to do this job, and that's all this is. I'm not sitting here to do an audit. It's not my job to be the audit. It's not my job or any of our jobs to do this. This strictly was one of those, it fell in our lap because we started looking at these contracts, and this was so blatant. And it just brought up a host of questions, and because of that, we're going to be taking corrective actions. In conclusion, I will support the other amendment, substitute motion, and then we will look at the fact that once we get that information, we'll be in a better position to move forward and know where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I don't have anybody on the list, so let's go ahead. We have a motion, we have a second. Do you want us to read that motion back, Ray?
If I would, I'd like to clarify it, make
Go
sure
ahead,
that-
Ray.
Substitute motion is to have the two city attorneys investigate the city's continuing services contracts and clarify the APT contract. Have the attorneys seek out a third-party auditor to conduct a forensic audit.
That's the way I understood the motion. Is that correct, everybody? We got a lot of head nods, so that's the motion. Let's take a vote. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Mr. Overdale. I should have asked you, Steve, was that it? Please, tonight?
That'll be it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Overdeer. Mr. Marlar.
Just a couple of quick things. I will be the MC for the tree lighting on the 5th of December. Also on the 6th of December, and I'll be making these announcements again on the 2nd, is the annual Matty Kelly Sounds of the Season. That will be at Village Baptist Church at 7 p.m. Most of the church choirs participate in that. The admission fee is a unwrapped toy, and this all goes to benefit various organizations throughout the area.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight.
Mr. Morgan.
Harbor Docks will be hosting their annual Thanksgiving dinner where we feed the public for free from 11 a.m. till 9 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day. No charge for the food, but we accept donations for Habitat for Humanity. And so anybody who doesn't want to cook and eat some good Thanksgiving food, we invite you to come.
Thank you. The only comment I have is I'm going to volunteer Mr. Marlar to also MC the boat parade the following night at 6 p.m. I can do that. Thank you, sir.
Are you going to sing like Kyron?
That's the 15th.
You're emceeing the boat parade? No, I was giving it over.
I'm passing it over. I got Shanghai last year.
No, you don't get to sing. You just get to enjoy that.
Oh, my God. No, the shower doesn't even help. Ms. Kopp.
Just one quick item. A few meetings back, the council had asked staff and I to work on the Captain Royal Melvin Park RFP, and so I just wanted to give you an update on that, which is staff has prepared the first proposed final RFP package. It's actually an RFB for bids. It is now in my review. I'll be reviewing it this week, and then we will forward it to you as soon as it's final.
Is that it?
Nothing from me.
All right. We have our last opportunity for the public to come up and make any comments if they'd like to weigh in. I appreciate everyone coming tonight, and y'all have a happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you between now and then. Meeting adjourned.